Hello everyone, my name is Lucy Choma Anyangolo and welcome to my week one discussion on needs assessment as a diagnostic tool. I'm originally from Nigeria and currently pursuing my master's here at Arizona. I'm the founder of Agridemi Africa, an agribusiness education platform focused on workforce development and digital learning. Because I spend a lot of time designing courses and learning experience, this week's topic immediately resonated with me. It reminded me that our role as learning designers goes beyond creating courses. We are responsible for solving performance problem. The doctor analogy is a great way to understand purpose of a need assessment. Imagine visiting a doctor who immediately gives you medication without asking about your symptoms or even conducting any test. Even if the doctor has good intention, there's no guarantee that the treatment addresses the real illness. Learning designers face a similar situation. Organizations often request training because they assume that because they assume that's the solution. However, without first diagnosing the performance problem, we always risk creating training that doesn't solve anything. Just as doctors diagnose before prescribing treatment, learning designers should diagnose organizational performance before designing instruction. The idea was reinforced by Brett's webinar. One point that stood out to me was that learning designers should never assume a client request for training reflects the actual problem. Instead, we should ask questions, understand the organizational goals, gather evidences even before making our recommendation. Our responsibility is not simply to develop training, rather, it is to determine whether training is even the appropriate solution. Sometimes the problem may lie elsewhere, and training alone won't improve the performance. Stephanic first chapter helped me clarify the differences between need assessment and need analysis. A need assessment focuses on identifying or verifying whether a performance gap actually exists. During this stage, the need assessor remains objective and gathers evidence from multiple sources. Instead of relying on the client's assumption, a need analysis, however, on its own end, gathers A need analysis, however, occurs after the need has been confirmed. It investigates the underlying causes of the performance gap to determine whether it exists and what type of intervention is most appropriate. Understanding this distinction helps learning designers to avoid solving the wrong problem. That's why Stefanik also emphasized the importance of collecting evidence from multiple sources. Rather than relying on one person's opinion, learning designers should gather information through interviews, observations, survey, performance data, customers' feedback, and even organizational documents. Using these multiple sources allows us to validate perceived need, uncover the actual need, and make evidence-based recommendations that are more likely to improve performance. After gathering evidence, the next step is determining whether the problem is actually instructional, non-instructional, or a combination of both. And if employees lack the necessary knowledge or skills, then training may be appropriate. However, if the issue results from poor processes, limited resources, unclear expectation, or organizational barrier, then training alone will not solve the problem. And as Mark Goldrick and Tobnis explained, conducting a need assessment provides the foundation for selecting the most effective intervention and later evaluating its success. This week's model challenge how I think about instructional design. As the founder of Agrodemy Africa, my first instinct when learners struggle is often to create additional learning resources. However, this lesson is reminding me that more training is not always the answer. Conducting a proper needs assessment helped me identify whether the challenge is actually related to instruction or whether changes are needed in learners' support, organizational process, or available resources. So moving forward, I want to become the type of learning designer who diagnoses problem before designing training. These reflections were informed by Brett's webinar and the assigned readings by Stefanik, as well as Magodrick and Toby. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I look forward to learning from all of you throughout this course, and I welcome your comments and feedback. Have a wonderful weekend.